a lot of things that we do here at GEL, because we cannot travel, are talking about the culture, history, and the people in the areas that we are around here in Tucson, especially on the campus of the U of A. And we feel this is a very integrated and important part of the university, and we want to talk to you about it now. And luckily, we have a great panelist of friends and colleagues that I've had over the years, and they're going to give you a great webinar about their experiences here at the U of A and also in their organizations too. Currently, we're not traveling once again for GEL because of the pandemic, but we hope to travel soon. So hopefully everybody can still social distance and mask up so we can be safe and actually travel again for the next upcoming years with GEL. So of course, I can't do this alone. I want to introduce my team of my interns here. If you can all introduce yourselves, please.
Hi, my name is Leslie Soto. I am a current senior at the University of Arizona with a major in speech, language, and hearing sciences and a minor in Spanish, and I am a current intern for GEL.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vanessa Madrid. I'm a senior here at the U of A, studying political science and public management and policy, and I'm also an intern here at GEL.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elena. I'm a fourth-year PhD student in the school psychology program, and I am the graduate assistant for GEL.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cristal. I am a first-year PhD student in the Educational Leadership and Policy program here at the U of A, and I am a lead intern for GEL. So a little bit about GEL, once again, also known as Global Experiential Learning, is that we integrate travel, multicultural education, and service learning, all to empower students with knowledge and their experiences here at the U of A. We are committed to increasing access and participation for traditionally marginalized first generation, DACA and undocumented, and low SES students. So with this, we do provide a lot of opportunities with GEL, which is awesome. We provide credited opportunities, and with that, it's kind of like taking a class but abroad and not in a typical classroom. We provide low or no cost programming, and this is with partnering scholarships with programs here on campus. And then we do have opportunities for domestic and international travel. And then the last overall and main important focus is social justice, environmental justice, and culture and identity exploration and service learning. So a little bit about me, because I was a low-income student, or I am a low-income student, you know, first-generation student, and a Latina student, I never expected to travel abroad. And with GEL, thankfully, I've had the opportunity to travel to Mexico, Southeast Asia, and Hawaii. So on to the next slide. Thank you.
So before we continue the webinar, we at GEL would like to acknowledge the land in which we sit upon. So with this being said, we want to share with you this land acknowledgement video that was created by the UA American Indian Alumni Club.
Skikdash Wasajimai, Anian Upjigik, Amy Len Spotted Wolf, Aniapam Amjad, Judge Shaik, Wawikir Dikjikshan, Thanatham Joed. Annual Miss Indian Arizona 2020-2021. Good day. My name is Amy Len Spotted Wolf, and I come from the Fresno Canyon community in the Babikiwi district on the Thanatham Nation. I am a senior here at the University of Arizona studying elementary education under the Indigenous Teacher Education Project. I am Miss Indian Arizona 2020-2021. Samach Achmach An Thanatham Hajurika Dam Oyopo. We acknowledge our presence on the Thanatham ancestral lands. For time immemorial, the Thanatham have been part of this landscape and the University of Arizona. The rich history and connection the Thanatham have to the University of Arizona is visible in the land. The saguaro, agave, ocotillo, and creosote bush used to beautify the university campus are sacred plants to the Thanatham. The mountains that surround the University of Arizona and contribute to the advancement in the studies of the Southwest at the UA are the homes of our ancestors. Babatoag, also known as Mount Lemon, Chimamactoag, also known as Tumamak Hill, Toakuo, also known as Santa Rita Mountains, are just several of the many mountain ranges important to the Thanatham culture and identity. Our connection to the land is living and breathing in us here in Chikshan. We use this connection to the land and our ancestors to guide our studies at the University of Arizona. Tehugi, Sapa, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today our program will be featuring panelists speaking about the Divine Nine. From 1906 to 1963, 5 historically Black Greek letter fraternities and sororities were established and still flourish to this day. These historically African-American Greek letter organizations, also known as the Divine Nine, earned their title due to their many acts of service and pivotal roles in enhancing the livelihood of people of color. These organizations were founded during a time when African Americans were denied equal rights and privileges most Americans enjoyed. And even today, the primary mission is to bring about justice, positive changes in the Black community. Today, we will discuss with some of Divine Nine, University of Arizona community and student leaders and learn more about the history, people, and culture of these impactful organizations. During this webinar, participants will have the opportunity to ask panelists questions using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to ask any questions and we will take the time towards the end of the presentation to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. And this brings us to our next slide of introducing our speakers for today. We would like to welcome Dr. Mohammed Mahmoud, Vice Provost Kendal Washington White, Denise Trimble Smith, and Associate Vice Provost Ivy Banks.
Dr. Mohammed Mahmoud, Senior Water Policy Analyst, Central Arizona Project, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Dr. Mohammed Mahmoud is a Senior Water Policy Analyst with the Central Arizona Project. His educational background includes a BS 2001 and MS 2003 in civil engineering from Michigan Technological University and a PhD 2008 in hydrology and water resources from the University of Arizona. He is also currently the chair of the Water Utility Climate Alliance. Mohammed joined the Alpha Beta Phi chapter of Phi Beta Sigma at Michigan Tech in spring 2000. He served as chapter president, social chair, and chapter historian during his time with Alpha Beta Phi chapter.
And next we have Kendal Washington White, Vice Provost and Dean of Students, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Kendal Washington White was born in the Empire State, New York, and raised on the rural eastern shore of Virginia. The middle child and only girl, she is a first-generation college student in a family where a college education was an expectation thanks to her mother and grandmother. Kendal is the Vice Provost for Campus Life and Dean of Students at the University of Arizona, overseeing departments that provide direct services to students, housing and residential life, campus health, campus recreation, Disability Resource Center, and many more. In her 27 years at the U of A, she has served in a variety of positions. She values the relationship she has developed with students, employees, and development opportunities she was able to provide to undergraduate and graduate students, and the amazing colleagues she has supervised, advised, and counseled over the years. Her engagement in the Tucson community includes serving as a board member of the Community Foundation of Southern Arizona, chair of the African American Legacy Fund, and the president of the Tucson Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Denise Trimble Smith, Project Director, Diversity and Inclusion, Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. Denise Trimble Smith is a Ruby and Life member that joined Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated 27 years ago as a chapter member of the undergraduate chapter at the University of Arizona. Denise is a current parliamentarian of the Lambda Alpha Sigma Tucson Alumni Chapter. She served as the Western Region Undergraduate Chapter Coordinator, International Grand Sergeant at Arms, Western Region Sergeant at Arms, and has been the lead International Sign Language interpreter since 1994. Denise is the first in her family to graduate college with an AA American Sign Language Interpreting, BA History, and MA Special Education. Denise was an ASL teacher for nearly 20 years, but currently she is a project director at of Diversity and Inclusion at the University of Arizona. Denise is also an event coordinator, wedding officiant, and CEO/owner of Courageous Conversations, LLC. She has 3 amazing daughters, and together the 4 of them love sports, music, travel, movies, dancing, and desserts. Her favorite quote is, "I'd rather walk with a friend in the dark than alone in the light," by Helen Keller.
And finally, we have Ivy Banks, Associate Vice Provost, Diversity and Inclusion, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Ivy K. Banks serves as the Associate Vice Provost, Diversity and Inclusion at the University of Arizona. Prior to joining Wildcat Country, Ivy served as the Associate Vice President and Dean of Students at Northern Arizona University. Ivy is a legacy member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated with 13 years of service. She serves as the undergraduate advisor for the outstanding Omicron Phi chapter at Northern Arizona University. Ivy also serves as the president of the White Dove Foundation of Arizona, which is the 501c3 organization for her chapter. Ivy hails from Cleveland, Ohio, and is married to her sweetheart from elementary school. She is the mother of 3 boys who she is grooming for membership in Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated.
Great, thank you all for joining us today. We will now continue on with our next slide. And today we will begin with Dr. Mahmoud, who will give us some history about the Divine Nine.
Thank you. Just give me a moment here as I set up the PowerPoint. And all right, hopefully you all can see that nice and clear. Thank you for the wonderful introductions. I'm very excited to be here. Really what I want to do today to sort of give context to the experiences that all the panelists will share about their esteemed organizations is just give you a little bit of history about the Divine Nine, or more formally called the National Pan-Hellenic Council. Obviously, we don't have a lot of time together, so I'm only really scratching the surface here. So there's a lot more information, but I just wanted to give you enough sort of kernels of information and nuggets of knowledge to give you a taste of what these organizations are about. And one of the things I wanted to do in this presentation is not just sort of briefly cover the history and origins of these 9 organizations, fraternities and sororities, but really give it to you in context to history, general history, what is happening in the country at that time. A lot of times when we look back in history, different events or periods, we tend to focus on things in isolation, but really to understand the significance of the Divine Nine's history is to really understand their place in time and the events that were happening around them before they, as they were coming into form. So to do that, one of the things I wanted to start with is to give you a historical context on the state of African Americans at the end of the last century. So the late 1800s, a lot of these organizations were started to be founded in the early 1900s, but may seem like a long period prior, but it actually has a very important connection. So just very quickly, just brief history. So Emancipation Proclamation, abolishment of slavery only happened in 1863. End of the war in Juneteenth happened in 1865. Over a decade after that, so after the end of the Civil War, up until 1877 is the period we call the Reconstruction era. That's when now the unified post-Civil War United States look towards dismantling institution of slavery and the idea of the Confederacy in the South, and to extend the principles of Emancipation Proclamation. And from that, not long after that, in the 1880s, longer reasons in history, the onset of segregation started to rise up in the South and spread throughout the country by things we refer to as the Jim Crow laws. And it really became, sadly, the sort of the law of the land in 1896 with the Supreme Court Plessy versus Ferguson, which basically reinforced segregation as being constitutional, the idea of separate but equal facilities between white Americans and Black Americans. So very significant events that kind of lead up to what we're going to talk about in terms of the formation of the Divine Nine organizations. Another note, before we start on that, is relating to access to higher education. Because of segregation, because of Jim Crow laws, universities and colleges were essentially fully segregated in the southern portion of the United States. There were few universities in the north that allowed enrollment of African American students, but even then there was still segregation of those students on those campuses. They could attend, they could enroll, but they really could not participate in anything else. They weren't afforded the services that universities would have provided to all students. One other thing before we dive into the Divine Nine, there was actually a Black led organization that was founded before any of the Divine Nine, and it's called Sigma Pi Phi fraternity, or referred to as the Boule. The difference being that this fraternity, which was founded in 1904, was actually non-collegiate. It was targeting a membership of older professionals and tended to be more exclusive. It had this air of being a sort of a secret society organization. Few were selected. It was very exclusive. But the goal of it really was to provide professional and social support for Black professionals, pretty much right after the turn of the century. I just wanted to give recognition to that. They may have been the first Black Greek-led organization, but they weren't at the collegiate level. The first of the Divine Nine that came to existence is Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And as I mentioned in my first slide, African-American students at these non-Black colleges that weren't all Black colleges that some of these organizations were founded at were segregated from the rest of the student body, and as such could not join other fraternities that were in existence, which were only white fraternities at that time. No Black fraternity had existed yet. If we look at Cornell University during the period of 1904 to 1906, not only were there not a lot of Black students enrolled, the retention of those students was very poor. There was a particular class, I think it was between 1904 and 1905, where that particular class of Black students was not even able to re-enroll the following year. So there was a huge retention issue for the few African-American students that were at that university, Cornell, in upstate New York. This prompted a particular group of students, Black students, to create a study and support group for the remainder of their peers that were suffering under these conditions. The study group became very successful, and some of its members, based on that success, wanted to make it more permanent and create a more permanent, stable foundation for a support group beyond what was originally intended. This eventually became the foundation of Alpha Phi Alpha. These particular men became the Seven Jewels. That's what members of this fraternity referred to their founders, and therefore Alpha Phi Alpha came into existence in 1906. Some of their famous members include the great Martin Luther King, Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, and you may also recognize newly elected Senator of Georgia, Mr. Raphael Warnock. Moving on to Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. If we thought the status of Black students in white colleges was difficult, generally, if you look at it in terms of women, higher education for women in general, of any background, was disapproved in America at that point in time. It wasn't looked upon as something favorable. Clearly and thankfully, the times have changed. But this was even more pronounced for Black women trying to achieve higher education. So we look back in 1907, there was a particular student at Howard University by the name of Ethel Hedgeman, who was inspired by stories of sorority life from a faculty member there who had attended Brown University. Obviously, these would be sorority life of white sororities at that point in time. This really inspired Ethel to begin to recruit and organize her classmates in Howard University to possibly embark on creating a new sorority for African-American women. 9 women, including Ethel Hedgeman, then formally founded Alpha Kappa Alpha in 1908. Of that particular period of recognition was the sophomore class of 1908. These were particularly 7 women who were admitted without initiation into the sorority because they had very significant contributions to the organization. And because of their huge contributions at that early period of the sorority, they were also revered like the founders themselves. Another group of Alpha Kappa Alpha women that are also highly respected are those referred to as the incorporators. And these were 3 women who led the effort to incorporate Alpha Kappa Alpha as an organization to preserve its ideals and identity. And there's a little bit more about that later. We'll pull on that thread a little bit later because it's relevant to one other organization. Famous members, probably the most famous right now is our Vice President, Ms. Kamala Harris, as well as actors, comedians, Yvette Nicole Brown and Wanda Sykes. Moving forward, in terms of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, as you recall, African-American student life still remained isolated and limited at white colleges. Like I said, Black students were banned from utilizing recreational and social facilities. One particular student at Indiana University by the name of Elder Diggs, recognizing these challenges, saw an opportunity to enhance the African-American student experience, particularly at Indiana University in 1910, where he was enrolled. And he was inspired with this idea because he had just recently came from Howard University, which is a historically Black college university, where student life was very active and thriving, and there was support for Black students because it was a Black college and university. Elder Diggs organized 9 African-American men, originally under an organization called Alpha Omega. The idea there was to research this concept of forming a fraternity. And then in 1911, these 10 men actually went ahead and formed this permanent fraternity, originally called Kappa Alpha Nu. Unfortunately and sadly, which was prevalent at the time, segregation was alive, so racism went unfortunately hand in hand with that. They changed their name from Kappa Alpha Nu to Kappa Alpha Psi in 1914, and partly because some of the white students that were at Indiana University started to refer to the original name of Kappa Alpha Nu in terms of racial slurs and would say Kappa Alpha N-word. So that was part of the reason to shift from Kappa Alpha Psi and has remained Kappa Alpha Psi to this day. Some of their famous members include comedian Cedric the Entertainer, and probably 2 of the biggest legends in basketball history of Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell. Moving on to Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. This time we look back at Howard University, and there was a desire to enhance the Black Greek collegiate experience by adding another fraternity at Howard University. At that particular point in time, Alpha Phi Alpha had established its second chapter, its first one being in Cornell, at Howard University in 1907. So they were the first to establish a Black fraternity in Howard, but it wasn't their first chapter. The concept was really initiated by 3 undergraduate students with the assistance of their faculty advisor. And these 4 collectively would later be officially the founders of Omega Psi Phi in 1911. However, their path to recognition and formally establishing their fraternity was a little bit littered with obstacles. At that time, Howard University initially refused Omega Psi Phi recognition. And the reason being was that there was growing distrust of fraternities and sororities, and that the administration had a perceived link to secret societies, that it would be a negative secret society, and that would be connected to the decline of morality. Really very suspicious and conspiracy theorist type thinking. However, the 4 founders persisted. They did not quit. They launched a public campaign on campus, advertising their fraternity, spreading word of mouth. They started lobbying other faculty members to support their initiative. And after lengthy negotiations with the university president, who was really the main thorn in preventing them from establishing recognition, they pushed forward. They had to discuss issues on fraternity scope. The president wanted Omega Psi Phi to remain a local fraternity. The founders wanted it to become national. There were issues in aspects of the Constitution. Eventually, with much perseverance, they were able to be finally recognized at Howard University as a national fraternity in 1914, 3 years after they were founded. Some of their famous members include illustrious poet Langston Hughes, Jesse Jackson Sr., and basketball GOAT Michael Jordan. So you may remember that I said we'll touch on an aspect on the Alpha Kappa Alpha Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority slide, and really the beginnings of Delta Sigma Theta sorority incorporated are indeed connected to Alpha Kappa Alpha. In 1912, undergraduate members of Alpha Kappa Alpha wanted to reorganize the sorority in a number of new ways. They wanted to become more politically active beyond just being a social club. They wanted to establish a national sorority with other chapters, not just local to Howard University. And probably the biggest change would have been to change the name of the sorority to Delta Sigma Theta. Some of the viewpoints was that Alpha Kappa Alpha felt that the name Alpha Kappa Alpha, was perceived as to be too derivative of Alpha Phi Alpha Beta chapter. Because of this sort of growing desire of shift for the direction of the organization, conflict arose particularly between the undergraduate members who wanted to reorganize and graduates who caught wind of this in Alpha Kappa Alpha that wanted to preserve the organization with its original vision and mission. This sort of resistance from the graduate side was championed by Nellie Quander, a lady by the name of Nellie Quander, who actually, referencing back to the Alpha Kappa Alpha slide, led Alpha Kappa Alpha's incorporation efforts, and it's connected to this particular event. Ultimately, 22 of those dissenting undergraduates declined Ms. Quander's ultimatum to drop the new sorority name, and they embarked forward and moved forward to officially found Delta Sigma Theta in 1913 at Howard University. Famous members include famous musicians Roberta Flack, Natalie Cole, and actresses Keisha Knight Pullum and Kim Whitley. Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, though founded in 1914, actually had its inception many years before. The idea of the fraternity was conceived many years before 1914. In the summer of 1910, one of its founders, A. Langston Taylor, was inspired in high school by the idea and stories of Black Greeks from Howard University when he heard stories from a recent graduate of Howard University. Fast forward to his enrollment at Howard itself in the fall of 1913, already with a mission, with a vision of a fraternity in hand, of how it would look like, how it would potentially operate. After enrolling in Howard University, he joined with two other men to form the foundation of this fraternity, and these three ended up being the founders of Phi Beta Sigma. In November 1913, the founders initiated their first new members, 9, which were very important in Phi Beta Sigma history. And finally, this culminated in January 1914 when Phi Beta Sigma was officially established and founded at Howard University. Took about 3 months later for this new fraternity to be recognized by Howard University administration. One interesting thing that happened not too long after Phi Beta Sigma was founded, it grew very fast in the East where it was founded. A letter was received by the organization from Elder Diggs, who you recall was one of the founders, or primary founder of Kappa Alpha Psi, to propose a merger with Phi Beta Sigma. And part of the reason is, as Sigma was growing, Phi Beta Sigma was growing in the East, Kappa Alpha Psi was actually growing in the Midwest, where it was founded from Indiana University. After much consideration and discussion of pros and cons, Phi Beta Sigma respectfully declined. And you could imagine how much of a shift that would have been if that actually occurred. Some of the famous members of my fraternity include the great, recently departed John Lewis and Huey P. Newton. Some of the younger audience members may recognize King Bach, the comedian online. And then University of Arizona's very own and personal friend of mine, Eugene Edgerson. Moving on to the wonderful Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Zeta Phi Beta sorority's history is very much intertwined with that of its brother fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma. In 1919, one of the members of Phi Beta Sigma had approached a lady by the name of Arizona Cleaver about forming a sisterhood that would essentially also, new sorority, that would also be a sister organization to Phi Beta Sigma. Ms. Cleaver shared this idea with 4 other women that would eventually, all of them collectively would become the 5 Pearls, which is how we refer to the founders of Zeta Phi Beta. After being granted permission by Howard University, Zeta Phi Beta officially came into existence in January of 1920. And not long after they officially arrived on campus at Howard University, members of Alpha Kappa Alpha and Delta Sigma Theta held a welcome reception for this new sorority after they were founded. So there was still very much support within these organizations amongst each other. One of the unique things about Zeta Phi Beta and Phi Beta Sigma, they're brother sister organizations in more than name. They're the first and only constitutionally bound sister brother organizations in the National Pan-Hellenic Council. Some of their famous members include Zora Neale Hurston, Shaka Khan, and Cheryl Underwood. Moving on to Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. One of the things I found very sort of unique and interesting about how Sigma Gamma Rho was founded is the environment that this sorority came into existence. So it was founded at Butler University, which is similar to Kappa Alpha Psi, is in the state of Arizona, a state of Indiana, or Kappa Alpha Psi being at Indiana University. In the 1920s, it was even more difficult and really dangerous to try to bring such an organization to the forefront because of some of the things that were happening in the 1920s, particularly in the state of Indiana. The Ku Klux Klan was seeing a resurgence in its activity and its members, and Indiana was widely known to be one of its main strongholds. One of the statistics that I read was that about nearly 30% of men in Indiana were members of the KKK. So this would be a very hostile and dangerous environment to try to bring attention to a Black organization, especially in essentially a white college, being Butler University. But despite these very real and serious threats, 7 young teachers were moved ahead and founded Sigma Gamma Rho sorority at Butler University in 1922. Not long after that, incorporation for the sorority followed a month later in December, and officially expanded to become a national organization in 1929. Some of their famous members include Hattie McDaniel, MC Light, Kelly Price, and DJ Spinderella of Salt, and formerly, I guess, of Salt and Pepper. But up until this point, these organizations weren't necessarily structurally linked together until the National Pan-Hellenic Council was formed in 1930 at Howard University. And even when it was formed, not all of the members up until this point that had been founded were members. Originally, when the council was established, only Alpha Kappa Alpha, Kappa Alpha Psi, Omega Psi Phi, Delta Sigma Theta, and Zeta Phi Beta were members. These were essentially the founding members of the National Pan-Hellenic Council. But expansion followed suit very shortly. 1931 saw the addition of Alpha Phi Alpha and Phi Beta Sigma, and then 1937 saw the addition of Sigma Gamma Rho. And it would be many, many, many years after that, in 1996, where Iota Phi Theta would join the National Pan-Hellenic Council and officially become the Divine Nine, or nicknamed, I should say, the Divine Nine. Prior to Iota joining the council, this collective was actually referred to as the Elite Eight. And the nickname Divine Nine was adopted after Iota Phi Theta joined, and really was coined by author of the name of Lawrence Ross Jr., who actually produced a book in 2000 called The Divine Nine. And that's how the name was originally came into existence and kind of took off from there. Great resource, by the way, if you want to, a little bit dated at this point, but great resource on some of the history of these organizations. Finally, that brings us to Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated. And really, Iota Phi Theta's genesis is intrinsically linked with the civil rights movements. The year they were founded, 1963, was a critical moment in the civil rights movement, which was well underway. Some of the things that happened that year are historic and remain historic to this day. You all must have seen the horrible pictures and video of the Birmingham police unleashing dogs and water hoses on peaceful protesters protesting for the right to equality and equal treatment. The gunning down of a prominent civil rights activist in Mississippi by white segregationists also occurred that year. Probably the most iconic of all events was the historic March on Washington, where the famous Martin Luther King speech, "I Have a Dream," occurred. So because of all these huge societal changes and shifts, there was really a movement within the community and a hunger for young Black men to be advocates of social change and political justice. And that really propelled the 12 founders of Iota Phi Theta to create their fraternity. One of the unique thing about the founders of Iota Phi Theta, they were what we would deem today non-traditional students. They were older than your average student. They already had families, children, full-time jobs in addition to going to school. And most of them really were lifelong friends. They've been friends for a long time. And to me, that's unique because it really showed that this was a mature fraternity in terms of its, at least original membership, the founders, that then became ideally suited for the mature and primary cause of its time, which was being the attainment of equal civil rights. Some of their members, famous members, include actor Terrence Carson, legendary basketball and legendary basketball player Elvin Hayes. I just wanted to leave you with a few thoughts. And like I said, I'm barely scratching the surface here. These organizations have very rich activities, history, programs. There's a lot more you can learn. But one of the things that struck me is some of these common themes that I found in the history of these organizations. There are really three things that rise up: perseverance, innovation, and community. One thing, I talked about putting everything in context to history. You have to understand that most of the founders, or most of the young men and women that would form these organizations in the early 1900s were only one generation removed from slavery. What that means is their parent, uncle, aunt were born a slave. Remember, Emancipation Proclamation was only about 50 or so years earlier. And so slavery, this concept of slavery wasn't something they had to look up deep into their ancestry. They had a family member who lived it. So what struck me as being completely extraordinary is going from that within one generation to create these very important organizations that would then support sort of the African-American experience and movement in the United States. And even during an era of extreme segregation, these founders moved against all odds to create these unique and novel organizations in extremely hostile environments. And innovation in the sense that this idea of utilizing incorporation, which is very important to the Divine Nine organizations, enabled them to create lasting and legal organizations that would continue on in perpetuity, in a sense. And the continual expanding of their vision to meet the evolving challenges of the time: segregation, the civil rights movement, and community. Really, one of the important things is community. The example of support groups for disenfranchised Black students in discriminatory white colleges. And beyond that, establishing a critical network of collegiate professionals across the country when these fraternities and sororities started to expand and create chapters across the country and really later across the globe, so that even when facing great duress from society, American society, and some of the evils that have been perpetuated against them, found a way to support each other through that hardship. So really extraordinary, extraordinary legacy. And to me, to put it in a sentence, really the story of the Divine Nine is an important narrative of Black history. And it really illustrates the fortitude and resilience of the Black experience, particularly in segregated America. So as I leave you with those thoughts, I will end my presentation here, and I guess I will pass it on to Kendal to talk about her experience with her organization.
Thank you, Mohammed. Hello, everyone. So happy to see you here participating in this webinar. And for the sake of timing, I want to make sure that my sisters here have an opportunity to share their experiences as well. And so I'm really just going to respond to a couple of questions that we were asked to share. And really about how did I learn about Delta Sigma Theta? My eldest first cousin named Justine, also a first gen graduate of college, was someone that many of us young cousins looked up to her. She was the first person in our entire family to earn a college degree. And when I was a young girl, probably about 11 or 12, Justine's wedding occurred, and when her sorority sisters created a circle around her and sang the Sweetheart song, I was mesmerized, but not just because of that, but the bond among those women and the success and accomplishments that those women had, I was ready to go. Right? It was just an incredible experience. And so that's my first, opportunity to be among those women. And, I wanted to join. And part of it initially was to be in the same footsteps as Justine. But as I got older and understood more that it was beyond just wanting to follow in her step foots, but for me to understand more about Delta Sigma Theta. And what I really appreciate about my sorority is the social action element. Yes, sisterhood is number one, scholarship, all of that, but the social action is really important to me. And in my role at the University of Arizona, I can't be an activist when I'm working at the university, but I certainly can use the platform of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated to be activists outside of the University of Arizona. So I'm going to stop there because I want to make sure that Denise and Ivy have the opportunity and for people to ask us questions.
Thank you so much, Kendall and Dr. Mahmoud. So next we're gonna have Denise Trimble-Smith.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for this amazing opportunity. I know that we've already done our land acknowledgement, and that was amazing. But I also would be remiss if I didn't also acknowledge the 9 organizations that represent NPHC, the Divine Nine, but even more so, the 8 or the 7 that came before Sigma Gamma Rho. We love the fact that we're the baby girl of the sororities. And the baby girl of the Divine Nine, because we get to be a little bit more spoiled, if you will. They give us some opportunities that normally wouldn't happen. And we're treated very well because we're the baby girl. So we certainly appreciate our big sisters of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, and of course, all of our brother organizations. I am so excited to stand before you as a 27-year member of Sigma Gamma Rho. And it's awfully special that I am also one of the newest, if you want to say the baby girl of diversity and inclusion, because I went to U of A and I was a charter member of the chapter there at the university. Fortunately, we had several graduations. Unfortunately, all of those graduations have caused us to be to not have any members on the yard, is what we call the campus, on the yard right now. However, we're looking to change that here shortly. What attracted me to Sigma Gamma Rho was not just the fact that we were founded and established by 7 what we call beautiful school teachers, but also that it was established on a PWI, as our brother Mohammed just served us with a plethora of knowledge. But that was important. And for those, again, PWI indicates a predominantly white institution. The hardships that our founders had to go through really paralleled some of the hardships that I, years later, also had to endure here right in Arizona, being the only African-American young lady in an entire school. And you think, oh, you're not that old to have experienced that. Yes, I am that old. And so some of the very things that they endured during the founding of our sisterhood, I too endured. Being a first generation college student has paved the way for me to see things from a different perspective and to also be very appreciative of the things that are provided to me. And on the backs of our ancestors and on the backs of the trailblazers that created our sororities, but that created mine specifically. I think being the youngest of 5 also gave me a perspective. Because I am the first one to graduate college, I was able to experience things in a very different way. And because of that, I feel a debt of gratitude to follow in my founder's footsteps in almost everything that I do. Having that experience of being on a PWI, and having the experience of enduring racism, surviving racism, and my family being direct survivors of slavery, again, that gives you a different shape and a multitude when it comes to your organization. Sigma Gamma Rho was the first of the historically Black sororities in the state of Arizona, way back in 1950. And in fact, in 1952, at the Arizona Teachers College, known as Arizona State University, that was the first African-American sorority at an undergraduate level in Arizona. Again, when we talk about that image of our founders having to hide and meet in secret because the Butler University and the library in which they were meeting was directly across the street from what is known as the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan. That pulled at my heartstrings as well. Sigma Gamma Rho has just done so much for me. And I'll leave this with you. It's been so important in this 27-year journey that I have gained sisters and brothers, siblings, I should say, that have helped shape me into becoming the woman that I am today. Yes, I have natural brothers and sisters, and I'm the baby of my family, so I'm just getting it all over the place. And they're very protective of me. So it feels so good to be a part of the Divine Nine, to know that, yes, we have some banter, we even have some sibling rivalry, some competition at a very surface level. But I have siblings, 8 other organizations that make up millions of people that have my back, that understand what I may be going through as a college student and undergraduate, that understands and can support me in the areas of my professional career and even beyond. That means a lot. Greater service, greater progress is the motto of Sigma Gamma Rho. And when I came to join the organization, I didn't have the best of past. I was actually pretty embarrassed of some of the things that I had gone through as a young person. Was embarrassed that I came from very humble beginnings. My father died totally illiterate. My mother did not finish junior high, let alone high school, or had a college degree. And I knew the stock in which I came. So when I approached Sigma Gamma Rho, and when they approached me about joining the organization as a charter member, what stood out to me the most was when I was pouring out my heart about all the terrible things that I've done and all the trouble I had gotten into and all that kind of stuff. The sister who I love to this day, and we have a very strong relationship to this day, the soror, which what we call sister, said, Denise, I'm not interested so much in your past as much as I am interested in the greater progress of your future. That right there made me feel so confident. I knew I could take on the world. Because of that yes, that one yes, I thought I was not going to pass the interview. I thought they were just going to laugh me out of the room. But that one yes has shaped me to being a wildcat today. I wasn't able to graduate from ASU. My mom lost her job, U of A, and I had to go back home to the Phoenix area. But that one yes let me know that the disappointment I had in not getting a degree from the University of Arizona still pushed me to be able to get a degree from Arizona State University, and then later a master's from Northern Arizona University, and then saw fit for me to be back home as a wildcat. That one yes. And so I am so thankful for the yeses that my sorority has provided me, and the yeses that you as an organization, GEL, has provided me to sit before you on this Zoom call, pouring out my heart to tell you I'm so thankful for the Divine Nine experience. I'm so thankful for the men, women, people, the siblings who have chartered so many waters for me. And because of that one yes, I'm able to stay afloat. I'm able to continue my goals. I'm not finished yet, but I'm so happy that I still can breathe life into greater service, greater progress right there in Tucson, Arizona, right here as a wildcat. and anywhere I endeavor to go in my life. So thank y'all so much for the opportunity to talk with y'all today.
Thank you so much, Denise. We will now move forward with Ivy Banks.
Good afternoon. Before I begin to talk about my journey in Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, I would like to take one moment to pay homage to the 5 pearls who made this possible for me. They, in 1920, believed in a movement, and they joined with the Brothers of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. And I'm forever and eternally grateful to Arizona Cleaver Stimmons, Pearl Anna Neal, Myrtle Tyler Faithful, Viola Tyler Goings, and Fanny Petty Watts. I bring you greetings to the Divine Nine that is on the call, for those that are on the panel, and for the Divine Nine that is present in the call as well. So if you are here, please say hello to us as well. I bring you greetings in the chat. I would also like to pay homage today to the First Lady of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated in the state of Arizona, who I see is on the call, Madam State Director Patricia Spencer, who is a dedicated Wildcat and has done amazing things for the undergraduate sorority here, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. And actually it was under her leadership in the past 2 years that we were able to expand to be the only sorority that was at all 3 institutions across the state of Arizona. I was asked, why did I want to become a Zeta and what led me to this organization? I grew up in, I am a first generation college student, but very similar to Kendal, my oldest cousin went away to an HBCU. And I had gone to elementary school at a Catholic school. So my experiences were it was like a PWI, where I didn't see myself represented in high school or elementary school. And one day she was going back to college, and she said, "Do you want to ride with me?" And I looked up to her and was like, "Yes, absolutely." I was so excited. I was about 12 years old and got to jump in a car and go to a college campus for the first time, but specifically to an HBCU because she went to Cheyney University in Pennsylvania. And when I arrived on campus, she put on this blue and white sweater and this white skirt and grabbed this cane, and they began to go out and step on the yard. And I saw the beautiful Zeta monument with the rocks and the tree, and I heard them calling out. And then I saw these amazing, beautiful men of Phi Beta Sigma come out, and I said, that is me, that I am going wherever they are going, I am going. And so that was my first introduction to Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. And it was a fun introduction because I was able to see our engagement on campus. But when I began to dig a little bit deeper, I realized that Zeta really spoke to me because of what it did in the community. Our founding principles are scholarship, service, sisterhood, and finer womanhood. We are the finest sorority of the Divine Nine. And that means that we carry ourselves and understand that being at that time a Black woman, but we have many, many sorority sisters that are of all walks of life. And I was so excited to see what we were doing specifically in the Black community. I appreciated that we had the bond with Phi Beta Sigma because we thought about the Black family from not only the vantage point of Black women, but also with Black men. I was also impressed that we were the first sorority to have auxiliary groups, meaning that we thought about women that did not have college degrees. So we began to support women that did not have college degrees, and we brought them under us. Now, they were not considered Zetas. However, they are still our sisters and we support them. And we've seen many of our amici become Zetas as they look up to and now can achieve and see someone that has achieved a college degree. We also have go all the way down to our pearlettes, who are little 5-year-olds, and we go all the way up through high school. So I really was drawn into this idea that as an organization, we really were focused in on the family, we were focused in supporting our community, We have many opportunities throughout history in order to be the first. One of the things that we are the first at is we are the first sorority from the Divine Nine to charter chapters in Africa and also in the Middle East. So we went international when we established chapters in Africa all the way back in 1948. Also, we were the first to operate a business out of headquarters with a paid staff. You heard that we were the first to be bound to our brother organization. And also, as we talked about those auxiliary groups, each year our partnerships grow. We have our Stork's Nest, and again, that is founded in 1972, where we partner with the March of Dimes to ensure that we're increasing the number of women receiving prenatal care and babies that are born healthy, knowing that babies of color and women of color have very high rates of issues as it relates to prenatal care. Our partnerships continue to evolve. We have been partners with March of Dimes, St. Jude Children's Hospital, Women's Veterans, American Cancer Society, AARP, and we are actually the very first sorority to be partnered with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. So we continue to do a great deal with our sorority and getting engaged. We have been out, as you heard Kendal say, that I can't be an activist when I am in my capacity and role at the University of Arizona. However, outside of that space, you've seen us support Black Lives Matter. You've seen us whenever we start, and this was going back to 1920, that we are not a social organization. We are a community conscious, action-oriented sorority that really truly focuses on our community. So thank you for the opportunity to share with you about the finest sorority, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated.
Thank you all once again for sharing your experiences and for being here with us. Once again, I know you all already acknowledged, but I wanted to reiterate that we have Cindy Williams, who is a part of the Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Epsilon Omega Chapter Graduate Advisor Council, with us today. And then we also have Jonathan, member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, Lambda Iota Sigma Chapter from San Diego, California. So thank you all for joining us today. Once again, we are going to transition onto the Q&A portion. So we have one question and we would love for all of you to speak a little bit on it. And it's the question, what advice would you give to someone thinking about joining an organization, a Greek organization? So whoever wants to start, go ahead. And I can
do your research. Do your research. The Divine Nine organizations, as you heard Denise say, we have a little bit of banter back and forth, but we love each other nonetheless. So I would say do your research for the organization that you're looking or you're interested in. Get to know us, each and every one of us individually. And also know that this is a lifelong commitment. So when we made this commitment, when I made this commitment nearly 14 years ago, it was for life, and we commit ourselves to enhancing our community for life. So that's one of the pieces to consider.
I would just add to that, having been a campus professional for just a little while, I also worked in fraternity and sorority life through the Office of the Dean of Students up north in Northern Arizona University. And I got an opportunity to work with our historically white fraternities and historically white sororities, as well as our culturally based fraternities and sororities. And there is a major difference between our IFC siblings and our CPC siblings, in that our recruitment as well as our process of joining and membership is a little bit more private and secret. I don't want to use the word secret, but what we do is we really try to protect the process. We protect the journey because this is a lifelong commitment. We do want this commitment to be something that is reciprocated and that it is a great fit for both entities, the person who is pursuing membership and then the organization that is accepting members. And so Typically, our recruitment process and our journey to membership, that many of us call membership intake process, and each one of our organizations will have a different title for their membership intake process. That process is very respected, and your privacy is respected as well. So from the time that you pretty much let your intentions be known, and you post-COVID are able to go to community services together, study together, spend time together, that whole courtship and relationship builds, but is a private relationship until you have the opportunity to be revealed to the community. And that is a phenomenal journey. Spend some time looking at some of our neophyte presentations, and neophyte means new member, or new member presentations. They're exciting and they're very different across the country, across the world. But nonetheless, it's a rites of passage that really belongs to all of us. And know that we, in most cases, are very much private and respect this journey to be your journey, and not make it public until the time is just right and you've achieved the opportunity to be called a frater or a soror.
I'll just add that I believe that my interview to become a Delta was much more stressful than any job interview, because you want it so badly, and it can be intimidating for people, but it's worth it. It really is. And I'll just echo what Denise and Ivy have already stated, but you have to be prepared, right? You have to have public service. You have to have a great GPA, all of those things, but that interview is significant and scary. Not really scary, just it's a challenge.
Thank you all once again. And then Dr. Mahmoud, would you like to add anything?
I mean, my esteemed panelists put it best. I mean, I think just pick maybe just one item to underline that they've all raised up is, you know, do your research on the organizations as a whole. But I think the important piece is reach out to those that are actually where you're at, because yes, the organization, the history, the legacy, the vision, the objectives are important, but also who you're joining an organization, but you're also joining a brotherhood or sisterhood. And the people that are there are going to be your brothers, at least initially, you know, before you meet the many others around the country and the world. So you want to be able to build a personal relationship with those. So meet them, see what the rapport is, you know, and that's important too. So that I would just highlight that part.
Yes, thank you all so much. And then there are a couple of Q&As in the box, and I see that a couple of you are answering, so thank you for that. And then if we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you once again for answering the questions.
So to that end, we want to thank everyone who took their time out of their day to be here with us as we learn more about the Divine Nine with such amazing guest speakers. Adding on, we want to mention that our post-assessment is attached onto this slide, so please take a moment to take out your phones, scan the QR code, and fill it out as soon as possible. We also would like to reiterate that completing this assessment will count as your attendance to this webinar. So we hope you all enjoyed our presentation today and learned more about the Divine Nine. So I'll pass it on to Dan for any last remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much for our panelists, Kendal, Mohammed, Denise, and Ivy. What the sad news is we're out of time, and it looks like we have more questions. The great news is we have these new Wildcats here on campus with us. Besides Mohammed, he's in Phoenix, but I'm sure he'd come down anytime to come chat with you all. And it looks like you all have some new recruits too from the question and answer. So thank you so much. Once again, we love these webinars, but we want to get you out into the world as well. So hopefully we can all still social distance and mask up so we can get to traveling again. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you all.